Hey, what is up guys? To start off this video, I would like to say that this is going to be a part of a series, and I don't know at the moment how long it's going to be, but I do plan on continuing to add content to it as I learn. Alright, so hopping right into the video, we're going to be creating ourselves an empty game object. We're going to be naming it player, and then we are going to be adding a character controller, a rigid body, and a capsule collider. Next, we are going to be resetting our transform. Click on the player and push F to center, and then we're going to be adding a capsule. And this, for the moment, is only going to be our graphics until we get an actual player model. So we can go ahead and remove the capsule collider from this because we have one on the player. So the capsule, we're just going to go ahead and call that GFX for graphics. Alright, looking back at my notes, we also need to be making a camera holder as well as a stance positions empty object. Alright, so we've gotten our basic setup done for later. Go ahead and make sure that these transforms are at 0. So we are going to be using the new input system for this. So let's go ahead and go to our package manager, which will be in Window. Go to package manager. I already had it opened up, and we're going to go get our input system. I already have it right here, and we're just going to install that. Alright, once that's done installing, we'll go ahead and go back to our scene. Go down to our assets in the project files. We're going to go and create our different folders. I already have an environment that I can just load in. And then I'm going to go ahead and just take my player and move that. Alright, I have my player in my scene, and since I've created all these folders down here, I'm going to go ahead and go into my player, and I have one for data, guns, materials, prefabs, and scripts. We're going to go ahead and go into the data folder, and I have a folder set up for our input. I'm going to go in there, go to create, and then we're going to be creating an input action. I'm going to go ahead and call this player controls. Alright, now in our input action map, we're going to be creating movement, and then inside of that, we're going to be creating an action called move. We're going to give it the action type of pass through. It's going to start as a button, and then we're just going to change that. Then for our control type, we're going to be making that into a vector 2. There will already be an empty here, an empty binding. So we're going to go ahead and just delete that, and then we're going to grab our up, down, left, right composite, and then go ahead and just go over here to path, and then type in where you want that to go. So WSAD. Now we're going to go ahead and save our asset, and then go back and go over to the inspector, and we're going to generate a C# class. We can leave all of this the same and just hit apply, and now we have a C# class. We also can't forget that in our action map, we need to create an action for view, and then we're going to also be making that a pass through vector 2. And for our binding, we're going to be looking up mouse delta. Alright, go ahead and save. Gonna go ahead and recreate that script for us. We don't have to do anything to it. And now we can go ahead and get our player movement script on our character. I like going ahead and making it in the scripts tab, so I'm just going to make it here. There we go. And then I will drag that onto our player. Alright, so now that we're in our script, we're just going to go ahead and delete our start method. And we're going to add a couple of variables. Alright, so we're going to get a call to our character controller. We're also going to get a call to our input map. And then we're going to want a vector 3 for our camera rotation, as well as our player rotation. Then we need a vector 2 for our movement and view, as well as something to hold our camera holder. And then we want to make sure that we have a clamp for our camera. That way, when we look up or down, it doesn't do a full 360. Next, we're going to be going ahead and creating an awake method. Go ahead and create some white space here. Just type awake and tab. And there we go. We have an awake method. We're going to go ahead and take our player controls and put those in here. So we're going to make our player controls up here equal to new player controls, and then we're going to take it and make sure that is getting the event of the movement being performed or the view being performed, and then we're going to be reading the value of the vector 2. That will be right here. Next, creating some more white space, we're going to make sure that our player controls are enabled. So let's just do player controls dot enabled, not enable. No, it is enable. There we go. And we're not going to be passing anything through there, so just click over there, and there we go. We're done with that. Now we need to add in a couple more things. Get our new camera rotation and our new player rotation and equal those to the relative pieces, making sure that it is local rotation and not just rotation dot Euler angles. So our camera rotation needs to be going to the camera holder, and our player rotation needs to be going to its transform. Then we're going to be calling in our character controller and making sure that the script understands what it is. Next, inside of our update method, we're going to need to create two methods that we will be creating later. So we're going to be using calculate view and then calculate movement. All right, let's go ahead and get these made. I did happen to misspell this. Just missed a key. All right, so now that we have our classes down here, we're going to go ahead and, our methods down here, we're going to need to go ahead and go back into Unity and then create another script. We're going to be creating this inside of our data folder, not inside of our input. Actually, no, it will be in our input. Let's go ahead and create a new script, and we're going to be calling this our player settings model. I do have a plan for this later on in this series, to where when we go into our menu, or if we pause the game, we will be able to modify these from the pause game, similar to in Call of Duty. Whenever you want to change your sensitivity, you'll be able to go into this and change your sensitivity for your X and Y, or Halo, or whatever else. So we're first going to start off by taking away our mono behavior, and we're going to be making this class static. Alright, we can go ahead and get rid of these since we don't need them. And then we're going to be creating a class, and we're going to be calling it player settings. Also failed to mention, since this is a player settings model, it's going to hold separate things. So let's go ahead and grab a region for player and go down here. There we go. All right, so here we have our view settings. This is what I was talking about before. I went ahead and set mine to 15 and 20 because it's most comfortable, I find. Now we can go back into our player movement script. Here, save. Alright, and we need to make sure at the top of our script that we are using that player settings model. So just type in using and then static player settings model. There we go. And now we can call from that. All right, before we go back down here to our view, we need to make sure that we have something calling it in. So I'm gonna go ahead and go down here, create a header so we can modify these in the editor. And we're just gonna call it settings for now. I'll drop down and public player settings. There we go. Now we can drop down to our calculate view, and we're going to be getting the code in here. All right, so now that we have our code in here, we're going to be taking our new player rotation .y and making that plus or equal to our player settings, and that being our view sensitivity. And then we're going to be multiplying that by our player settings .viewX inverted. We're going to be telling it whether it is or isn't inverted, and then we're going to be multiplying that by our time.delta time. We're going to be taking the transform.local rotation. We need to make sure it's local, and equal that to a quaternion.euler, and then we're going to pass through our new player rotation. Then we're going to be taking our new camera rotation .x plus equal to player settings, and that be our dot view sensitivity on our y-axis. And then we're going to be multiplying that to our player settings and then basically doing the exact same thing. Down here for our new camera rotation.x, we're going to be taking mathf.clamp, and we're going to just be clamping that. That way, these up here that we had set before make it to where we're not going over the bounds of how far we want it to get, like look up or look down. We don't want to be able to look up and be able to see behind us. Then we're going to be just taking our camera holder .local rotation and make that equal to a quaternion.euler, and then we're passing through our new camera rotation that we created up here. All right, and before we move on to our movement, there is something that I want to add. And because I hate it whenever we go into the game and you click on it in the Unity editor, when you click on it, you're not able to go into the game, and you move your mouse around and your mouse ends up moving around outside of the game window. So we're just going to throw in cursor.lockstate, if I could type, and it's already filled out here for me, so I'm just going to tab. There we go. And equal that to cursor lock mode.locked. All right, so now we can go ahead and move back into our player settings model, and I want to add in a public float for our walking speed. I'm going to go ahead and make that equal to 3. And then I also want to have a strafe speed for walking left or right. I'm just going to make that slightly slower. Now we can go back into our movement script and go to the movement method. Alright, so inside our movement method, we're going to go ahead and be creating a variable for vertical movement. Vertical speed. And then we also need one for horizontal speed. Alright. Be taking our player settings, and we're just going to be plugging them in accordingly. Our horizontal speed would of course be our strafe speed, and our vertical speed would of course be our forward speed or backward speed. So we're just going to be setting this to walking speed. There we go. And then we want to multiply that by our movement.y. And then, of course, our time.delta time. There we go. And then for our horizontal speed, basically the exact same thing, except we want it to be our walking strafe speed and our movement x. It's already filled out for me. There we go. Then if we move down a little bit more, we want to grab a new movement speed. So what happens whenever they blend together? New movement speed, and then we're going to be equaling that to a new vector 3, and then we're going to be grabbing our horizontal speed. We're not going to have anything on, I believe it's the z or y. I believe it's y, and then our vertical speed. There we go. Then with our new movement speed, we want to be equaling that to our transform, and this is where we're going to be creating our movement. Transform direction, new movement speed. And then we just pass through our character controller. Character controller dot move and new movement speed. Alright, if we go back into Unity now, making sure that everything is plugged in. So if we go to our player, we need to pass in our camera holder. So within the player, we do need to have a camera. So under that camera holder, I'm just going to create a camera and call it player camera. Ooh. Something did happen, but we're still getting a null reference. Alright, and I finally figured it out. So, in our player settings module, we need to make sure that we are using system, and then we need to make this serializable. That was the only issue that I found, and whenever we go into our game now, I'm actually going to go ahead and go to our rigid body and lock the rotation on, let me see, which one was this? Shouldn't rotate on the Z. So let's go ahead and lock rotation on the Z axis. Go ahead and go to play. And now, click inside the game. Our mouse is not moving outside of it, and we can walk around our environment. Now, there is no gravity yet, so we do end up just floating off of everything, but that will be addressed in the next video. We can still walk up these mountains, though. Very beautifully designed. Alright, if you guys enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to see the next episode and continue building a game along with me. Also subscribe if you would like to learn with me in general. This is a channel on learning along with me as I learn to make games. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later.